quarterback's going to roll right and launch the ball out of bounds. It's going to look weird.
Rolling right, launching out of bounds, and Tony stealing the signals once again.
I feel as though most people expected and wanted Tom Brady to do stuff exactly like that during his first year as an NFL commentator. Yes, CBS kind of slapped Romo on the wrist for doing stuff like that, but at the end of the day, the man became popular as an announcer because of his ability to near perfectly predict what was going to happen on certain plays within an NFL game. When Romo first came onto the scene, there was something so new and enticing about the way he was calling games, the way that he was just blatantly displaying his football acumen to us. And if Romo could impress us, imagine what Tom could do. Imagine what the GOAT could do on the mic and the amount of wisdom he could impart to fans. And unlike Romo, no one was going to tell Tom Brady to stop doing things a certain way. No one was going to slap him on the wrist. It's Tom Brady. There are no checks and balances with him. So as fans, we were seemingly in a prime spot to just get a limitless amount of football knowledge from him when he was going to first start commentating in the fall. I am recording this video a week before the Super Bowl, so we have a lot of information. We got a lot of tape on Brady, so we could truly assess how he was as a commentator this year, and he sucked. Him and KB sucked. They were frequently bad and occasionally awful. It feels unfair to call them the worst commentating duo ever, because you could probably go back in the pages of NFL history and find some duo that was worse in some capacity, but it's hard to imagine a season of commentating more disappointing than this one, given that Brady should be the ultimate educator, the ultimate teacher of the game for fans, and he was anything but. In my opinion, Tom's failure to be a good commentator this year was rooted in his failure to be informative, alongside this fake giddy persona he crafted for Americans. But before we get to the main root of the problem, it's worth discussing the smaller stuff that especially stuck out at the beginning of the year, so it's time to talk about some stuttering and stammering. If there's one good thing that Tom did with his commentary this year, it was proving the worth of the sports journalism and communications degrees. And I get that I'm being a tad wry right now, but it truly registered with me. It's difficult to talk for over a minute on YouTube without tripping over your own words, so I can only imagine the difficulty of commentating an entire sports game. There's a reason why people are formally trained for this stuff. Go to school for it. Tom obviously didn't, and it shows. Tom stuttered, he didn't quite know how to fill dead air, and he really struggled with time. He would start these stories that were far too long, so then the ball would be snapped, he would have to awkwardly stop, and then KB would have to jump in and catch up with the play, and it would just serve for incredibly awkward television that would distract from the game itself. Yes, these problems were in part resolved as the year progressed, but they weren't entirely removed from the equation. My least favorite byproduct of Tom being generally inept at color commentary was KB constantly trying to re-engage this man over and over again. This was certainly the problem that was most phased out by the year's end, but early on, it was painful. It was painful to see KB spin up these questions out of thin air to so obviously set Tom up for the alley-oop. It contributed to the manufactured feel of their dynamic. It really made you realize how much Kevin was propping Tom up, which in turn called attention away from the game and brought attention to the struggles they were having in the booth. For me, these issues are semi-significant, but I should say they're not deal breakers either. If Tom was endearing in any way, shape, or form and was truly displaying that he was the pinnacle of football intelligence, I would be fine with these issues. I'd be okay with him getting his tongue tied up from time to time. But he doesn't come off as likable or intelligent. The cameras start rolling, the chompers are out, and he comes off as a robot. Wow, KB, what a matchup we have today between Saquon Barkley and the Philadelphia Eagles against the rookie phenom Jaden Daniels. This is a matchup. It's like, Jesus Christ, Tom, get the fuck away from me. I don't understand why Tom feels the need to feign this excitement. I don't understand why him and his people can't see that the energy that he brings to the booth is bizarre. And I guess you could say, well, Nick, this is Tom Brady we're talking about. There's always going to be a facade there. And I could understand that. But also, this is an obsessive competitor we're talking about here. So you'd think, even if he is a little overexcited at the beginning, that if a team makes a mistake, if a guy is not in his proper spot, if he does something wrong, Tom would be drilling into him. He would be a bit more scathing, like these other color commentator guys are. Not the case. Not the case at all. Tom laments player mistakes. I would have never seen it coming, but the man cannot stand to see people embarrassed on national TV. If a guy gets torched in coverage, if a guy allows someone to blow by him at the line, Tom is always altering his delivery to include a shade of pity. The charm of Aikman, the charm of the Manning cast, is that these guys hate to see bad football, and so if someone is blowing their assignments repeatedly, if they're not playing up to snuff, they're not afraid to single a guy out, and I don't think they ever do it in a mean-spirited way. I think they come with criticism from a rather reserved stance, whereas Tom, he's just really letting you know he feels bad for the guy that is always on the losing side of a play. Tom is hesitant to talk about player and coaching mistakes, but he's eager to talk about player and coaching greatness, which has the knock-on effect of whenever a play is finished, he is just right on it, talking about how smart, how fast, how strong a guy is. You can practically hear his smile through the screen as he's delivering praise. He is overly complimentary in a way that I've never seen any commentator before. For Tom, it's never that an NFL team loses a game because of poor scheming, sloppy execution, silly mistakes. It's always that the other team wins the game because of sheer, unabashed star power. I guess the focus on star power is congruent with his whole LFG Player of the Week award, but it's sad, truly sad that Tom can't give us deeper insights into what makes these great players great. It's just that Micah Parsons is a game wrecker. Derrick Henry's a beast. Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson both at the same time are the most explosive quarterback in the National Football League. Jaden Daniels, he can run. He's elusive, and that's what makes him a dual threat quarterback, and that's what makes Washington so scary. I mean, the amount of platitudes we have heard out of his mouth this year, it's insanity. He exclusively speaks in hyperboles and cliches. The closest thing that Tom does to full-fledged analysis is assign letter grades to players. He'll be like, that is an A- throw, but an A+ catch by. It's like, Tom, you were pulling these letter grades out of thin air. You need to tell us, this is what I needed to see on the field to know it was safe to throw that ball. This is what made it difficult for defenses to stop. Why are we just pulling letter grades out of our ass? Now, this last point is actually more of an indictment on KB than it is on Tom, but I think both men were guilty of trying to will teams back into games this year that simply were not going to get back into them. And yes, it was more apparent early on with those Dallas games against New Orleans, against Detroit, where they so clearly were trying to will Dak into just taking over the game. But this was not a problem that was phased out. It kept on happening. This duo covered a lot of blowouts, and even the games they covered that weren't blowouts, a fair portion of those were matchups where one team had firm control the entire time. And I get it. As a commentator, you do want the losing team to come back. You want an exciting game that you can promote to fans. But at the end of the day, if you keep on trying to spin the game a certain way, if you keep on trying to convince us that a team is going to come back when they clearly aren't, you're going to come off as disingenuous. As recent as the NFC Championship game, both Burkhardt and Brady were trying to sell viewers on the idea that a team that clearly was going to lose, that being the Commanders in this case, could find a way, had a fighter's chance to overcome their opponent, when the Eagles were just going to win that game. And for me, their refusal to be just straight talkers with us, the fact that they're always trying to promote a game that could happen, a miraculous comeback that could take place, it just adds to the artificial, manufactured, unnatural feel of their commentary. With the intertwining of gambling and the NFL, with the seeming rise of people saying that the fix is in, there has never been more of a demand for candidness among announcers, and if you want proof of that, look no further than the amount of praise heaped upon Aikman and Buck for how they called the Chiefs-Texans game. Viewers want commentators to truly communicate how they feel about the product they're seeing. They don't want commentators to hold their punches, and they certainly don't want the commentators to just veer off into sensationalism and, for the lack of a better word, just glaze players without any real analysis. When I think about everything I just said, when I think about this duo, I just kind of come to the conclusion that they are almost the antithesis of what I and what many others want out of a commentating duo in the NFL. Because Brady is anything but candid. He is seemingly always self-policing his language when he talks about players and coaches. Neither of these men are scathing enough when they see bad play or bad officiating. Brady's attempt to convey his supposed awe and wonder over the fact that these games are happening or over specific plays in a game just comes off as incredibly forced, and he is far too eager to simply use colorful adjectives to describe players as opposed to really breaking down the mechanics of a play, of a drive, and it's just all very disappointing. I started this video talking about Romo's style of commentary because I feel like best case scenario, Brady could have delivered an upgraded version of that to the world. He could have delivered insights to the layman in a way that no other commentator has ever done, and instead, we got commentary that was vapid and inauthentic in a way that I don't think we've ever witnessed beforehand. And that's why I think this year, the season he had with Kevin Burkhardt, it is the most disappointing commentating season that's ever been done before in sports history. And that's today's video. I thank you for watching.